Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in today. My name is Enrique Perez and I am the marketing manager here at RSF Social Finance. I am joined today by my colleagues Don Schaefer, President and CEO, Kelly Bewes, Director of Philanthropic Services, and Kate Danaher, Senior Manager of Social Enterprise Lending and Integrated Capital. Today, we will be talking about RSF's integrated capital approach to funding social enterprises. Don, Kelly, and Kate will present why integrated capital is so important and how it works. We'll also give you an insider's look into integrated capital in action. Now, I see 57 of you have joined, so welcome and thank you for spending this time with us. Whatever your current relationship with RSF is, we really just appreciate your interest in our work and hope you feel inspired to participate further. Now, the webinar will flow in this particular order. We have 30 minutes planned for presentation and 25 minutes planned for Q&A. So let's get started. And handing it off now to Don.
Thank you, Enrique. Hi all, hope you're well today. And I know that we're very much looking forward to talking about this important subject for us at RSF. So it's been about 4 or 5 years since we've used this term integrated capital. You can see a definition of it on your screen, but we use a working definition. The basic idea is that what we've seen from social entrepreneurs out in the world is that very often they don't just need one type of financial capital. They often need different types of capital, either at the same time or over the life stage of their enterprise. And so what I mean by different types of capital is that there are loans, there are equity investments, there are things like subordinated debt or convertible notes or revenue participations or other things like that. There are loan guarantees, there are grants. So there's a whole range of different types of financial capital. And then coupled with that, they very often need some consult, some counsel on how to think about what type of capital they need. And so we spend quite a bit of energy and time working with social entrepreneurs and helping them to structure and craft what capitalization plan that they have. And so we have set up a number of different funds and collaboratives at RSF that allow us to deploy different types of capital, as I'm saying, as the need arises. And so Kate will go through some examples. Kelly will talk about it some as well. One aspect that I want to stress is that well, number one, we found that in our experimentation with this over the last 3 or 4 years, that it's being met with there's a lot of demand for this, and so we're excited to be in a place where we feel like we have a unique set of capacities and funds that we can bring to meet this demand. And then what we've also found is that there's our capital, and then there's the capital that our clients, our investors and donors and partners have, which is also part of the integrated capital equation. So, we oftentimes are bringing other parties into an integrated capital transaction to leverage the work that we're doing to evaluate and do diligence on these opportunities, and then to document the loans and the investments that we're doing. We look at it as, we're kind of like a hub in a broader network now, as opposed to just seeing ourselves as a centralized, kind of banking institution or investment or financial intermediary. So I hope that makes sense. We'll just talk a little bit more about that. But for people who are interested in coming alongside us in loans or investments that we're doing under the banner of integrated capital, that's something that myself and others would be happy to talk to you about afterwards. So that's a little bit of an overview, and I think I'll turn it over to Kelly to talk a little bit more.
Thanks, Donna. I find that when trying to explain integrated capital, it can be really helpful to start with some context and history of how we launched this new phase of integrated capital here at RSF. So we have historically been doing different forms of what you could call integrated capital through, whether it was through having our donors guarantee loans or other sorts of collaborations that we've arranged in the past. But the most recent iteration of integrated capital really started about 5 years ago when some key donors came and talked to Don and I about their interest in specifically food hubs. And this was the beginning of the Local Food Capital Collaborative. So these donors, really out of a spirit of trust and really inquiry and being co-creative with us, came to us and said, how can we best put this gift money to use to really accelerate the work that you all are doing, knowing that we have a history of expertise in both lending and philanthropic services. So we sat down and had a handful of conversations with them and really realized that there was this opportunity to leverage the intersection of lending and giving and taking this gift money to deploy catalytic capital to support social enterprises. It was a really exciting sort of phase to be a part of with these donors, and I think a really key piece of it was their deep trust in us and our work. And we were all really inspired by that. So that was the inspiration behind our first integrated capital collaborative, which was the Local Food Capital Collaborative, and it started 5 years ago. It was originally a pilot, and in the pilot phase, we deployed about $2 million in funding to 40 projects. So it was really exciting to watch that pilot grow and develop, and now we got about 12 additional donors into that fund, and now we have about 5 collaborators in different focus areas. So that's sort of a bit of the history and inspiration for this integrated capital work, and now I'm going to hand it over to Kate to talk a little bit about how it works.
So in terms of how it works, Don mentioned a little bit about how we came to integrated capital. You know, RSF has been making senior secured loans for over 30 years to social enterprises, for-profits and nonprofits. And we've learned over the years that while we were primarily deploying one type of capital, as we got into the due diligence phase with these organizations, recognizing that with the type of business model that they have, which is underpinned with values, deep-seated integrity, and a mission to change whatever system they're working in, rarely was just one type of capital, namely the loans that we were making, the only form of capital that they needed. So we've been observing this for a really long time, and it wasn't until about 5 years ago, Kelly mentioned that we started the Local Food Collaborative, that we were able to use our networks and our capital to kind of create different tools to meet the needs that we were recognizing. So why integrated capital? Social enterprises can be very difficult to understand from the traditional investment lens. Because of those values and the explicit missions that underpin their business models, their growth trajectories, their exit strategies, their path to profitability, all of kind of the key metrics that a traditional investment lens looks through in order to make an investment don't necessarily apply, or they don't happen in the timeline that a traditional investment generally expects. So at RSF, we realized that there was we needed to do a few things. We needed to provide more nuanced structuring of the investment tools that we have at our disposal, namely senior secured loans. We also needed to identify other kinds of investing tools, less traditional. As Don mentioned, there's the sub-debt and royalty financing, convertible notes, and things that we hadn't deployed before, but those we needed to bring to the table. And we also needed to start coordinating those different types of capital along with our existing network of investors, donors, and partners in order to meet the needs of specific social enterprises. So some of the most straightforward ways that we use integrated capital all the time and every day is through loans and loan guarantees, or loans and technical assistance grants. It's very very often we recognize that those organizations that we really want to work with because of their mission don't meet kind of the traditional collateral or the cash flow benchmarks that we look for. And so using things like loan guarantees is something that we do every day. Technical assistance grants has become something that we also have started deploying across a lot of our loans. So when we get into the underwriting and due diligence process, we understand pretty quickly that an organization either doesn't understand how their inventory accounting system is feeding into their COGS correctly, or cost of goods sold, sorry, I'm getting a little jargony, or how their gross margins are contributing to their bottom line to get them to profitability. There's a number of things that we recognize early on, and if we can provide some technical assistance grants through third-party providers to work with organizations with that on the front end, they'll become stronger, and our loan actually becomes safer as a result. And something that I'll talk about in a few moments is where we really get very hands-on in how we structure financing for social enterprises. We can actually, you can see here, we have loans, loan guarantees, investments, grants, and non-financial assistance, meaning connections to networks. And we also have the ability to bring in third parties. And in some of the opportunities that we've identified, we've used all of these tools and some outside of our own organization in order to finance one social enterprise with the appropriate types of capital.
Yeah, and something interesting that's led to internally here at RSF is really rethinking our organizational design. We traditionally had sort of the loan team and then the philanthropic services team working in silos, and with this integrated capital approach, we really had to do a lot more collaboration between the teams, and it's led to just a lot of really interesting outcomes, like team members are getting a much broader education around different types of financing, which is really interesting for everybody. And also our decision making is becoming more distributed as more people need to be involved in different types of decisions. So everybody's sort of learning how to use the full toolkit, which is a really interesting development.
Yeah. And so to get into the details of one of our most recent integrated capital deals, I think you'll hear people at RSF say this is kind of the holy grail of what we consider integrated capital, is a package that we just put together with some of our partners for a company based here in San Francisco called Veritable Vegetable. Veritable Vegetable, just to give you a little bit of an idea of what they do, is one of the oldest organic produce distributors in the United States. They're women-founded, women-led, and over 65% of their workforce are women, which in the distribution industry is pretty high. Veritable Vegetable, its roots is really in the cooperative movement and supporting small farms. So throughout its history, every opportunity, every business decision that they've made along the way has been made through a lens of what's best for the community and our stakeholders, including our employees, our farmers, our partners, and not just the bottom line. So as they've grown to be, a very sizable organization in an industry that is very tough to make it in. They make decisions. They were way ahead of San Francisco in terms of paying ahead of the minimum wage. They've supported small organic growers throughout California for a very, very long time, when it's much easier actually to just work with one large grower. They prioritize working with lots of small growers. They've put a lot of investment into greening their truck fleet for distribution, and their general field builders. They consult with a lot of organizations we call food hubs, young organizations that are popping up across the country trying to figure out how to support local food system infrastructure. Veritable Vegetable is we consider one of the originals, and they spend an awful lot of time supporting those organizations and coaching them along. So Enrique, if you can move on to the next slide. When we started having conversations with them, their biggest need was around expanding their infrastructure so they could increase their capacity and deepen their impact. And while this company is very large and has been profitable for a very long time, again, going back to the values that underpin their business model, a lot of those profits over the years have been plowed back into ensuring above minimum wage, greening their fleet, and so on. And so when they needed to expand their warehouse capacity, being in the San Francisco real estate market, they didn't have many millions of dollars really on hand to fund that expansion on their own. So they needed to do it through debt, and a combination of debt and equity in order to get it done. So it was going to require a more creative approach to getting this done for them. So what RSF did, there was about $4 million in total that needed to be financed. 3.2 million of that could be done through senior secured debt. And so RSF partnered with one of our longtime partners, New Resource Bank, to split those loans in half and each do 1.6 million. So the 3.2 was fairly straightforward, but for those of you that have ever bought a home, you know that there is a certain amount of equity or a down payment that needs to go into any type of financing for either commercial real estate or residential real estate. And so the $800,000 hole is what we all collectively needed to figure out how to plug. And so the way that we did that, RSF was able to use $270,000 of its own money from the local food collaborative that Kelly mentioned, our first integrated capital collaborative. We structured that as subordinated and unsecured debt. And by being able to do that, we were able to bring along 4 other investors to bring in the other $400,000 alongside us in a total loan package there for $670,000. And that financing was able to be, we could think of it, because it was deeply subordinated, again, getting a little jargony, but we could think of it as equity. And then Veritable Vegetable was applying for a USDA grant for $100,000, but in order to be eligible, had to come up with a matching grant of at least a third of that amount. So RSF also committed $30,000 of grant funding to pledge to that matching fund, which allowed them to receive the USDA. So through, let's see, 4 external investors, 1 piece of subordinated debt, a USDA grant, and a $30,000. So that's about 7 different pieces of financing or individuals that were involved to get that $800,000 together in order to unlock the $3.2 million and allow Veritable Vegetable to expand. So that's a lot, but it was a really exciting opportunity for RSF to use its networks and the different types of capital that it had raised over the years to put this together for an organization that, hands down, more than most people we've come across, absolutely deserves to have this facility expand its capacity and continue the impact that it has in this community.
Yeah, and I think it's a great also demonstration of the important role that GIFT can play in leveraging these larger financing packages. I mean, that's the role of GIFT really in integrated capital. Integrated capital is such a key reason why we can take more risks and leverage that risky capital to meet the entrepreneurs where they're at. We think a lot about the role of GIFT here at RSF, and in our inspiration and the work of Rudolf Steiner, he talks about 3 different types of money. There's loan, purchase, and gift. And gift specifically has these really unique qualities in that it can build trust, it can build community, and especially it allows for experimentation, for taking risks, and even for sometimes failing. And I think what we see often in our financial world is that gift is really kind of left out of our economic thinking. And people in the philanthropic field, a lot of the investing is done, to try to get market rate returns. And so what we're trying to do is rethink the role that GIFT plays in our economy and really utilize the qualities of GIFT that do allow for more risk-taking, and also to just demonstrate trust and build community. And so we really think that GIFT is such an important part of why integrated capital works and thrives, because it provides this really flexible capital that's needed when social enterprises are doing this important work in the world.
Thanks, Kelly and Kate. So as Kelly mentioned earlier, we now have 5 of what we call these integrated capital collaboratives that support the other kinds of loan money that we have available to lend out. And so
These are, you can see on your screen, 4 of these have a food and agriculture focus. Biodynamics, fair trade, soil health, and local food are 4 of the collaboratives that we have. And so again, the idea, and the other one is around women-led social enterprises. And so the idea is that people are gifting these funds to RSF within one of these themed collaboratives. And then we are able to, at our discretion, look at an opportunity like Veritable Vegetable and provide whatever we feel like is needed, whether it be a grant that unlocks the USDA contribution, or whether it's a loan guarantee, or whether it's subordinated unsecured debt or equity funding. We can use whatever type of capital we feel is being called for, and then if it is a loan guarantee that isn't needed, or if it's a loan or equity investment that performs and provides a return, that money recycles back into the collaborative that it came from, and gets redeployed into something else. And so we have lead investors, or lead donors rather, for each of these collaboratives. And if you're interested, if you have passion around any one of these and are listening to this this call, this webinar, you can contact us, and we'd love to talk to you more about them, because we will be fundraising for them on an ongoing basis in the years to come. And so
I'll jump in.
Yeah,
here.
go ahead, Kelly. Yeah.
We got some feedback that the earlier section on the history and inspiration of integrated capital was not able to be heard, so I'll just give a quick recap. Essentially, the local food capital collaborative here at RSF was our pilot fund for integrated capital. And the inspiration was really a couple of key donors who came to us and trusted us and our expertise in both lending and giving to utilize gift capital to support local food and local food entrepreneurs. And so the inspiration really was this co-creation between us and donors who really trusted us to launch this type of financing called integrated capital. So started about 5 years ago. The pilot had $2 million in funding that went to over 40 projects, and now we have about I think 12 or 15 donors in that fund that keep it going. So
great,
yeah.
Great. This is Enrique Perez again, and I just wanted to give Dawn, in lieu of an overview that may have not been well heard, a moment just to give us a summary prior to entering the Q&A of just what opportunity he sees with integrated capital.
Sure. Yeah, sorry that you weren't able to hear it initially, in sort of the background for integrated capital. The basic idea is, as Kate alluded to in the Veritable Vegetable example, we're seeing all kinds of interest from and real demand from social entrepreneurs who don't just want a straight ahead loan. They may want a straight ahead senior secured loan as part of what they need. And so that's what we kept hearing year after year, you know, meeting after meeting with entrepreneurs, is that what they needed was an approach that would bring in different kinds of capital to meet the different needs that they have, either in one instance, like we just did with Veritable Vegetable, or over the life cycle of their enterprise. And so, what we've done, because of the flexibility we have as a nonprofit public charity that has been doing lending for 32 years, we've been doing giving for 32 years. We've also done lots of different types of investing over that period of time as well. Now we're kind of bringing them together so that that slide that Kate went through about the different tools we have access to, so that we can bring those to bear, you know, to meet the needs of an organization like Veritable Vegetable. And so I believe we have the opportunity to do a couple hundred more of these Veritable Vegetable kinds of transactions, you know, over the next 5 years or so. And we would like to invite others to come alongside us to learn about how to do it well, It takes more time, it takes more energy, and it's worth it because it's truly what the entrepreneurs need, and we think it'll be really satisfying for investors and donors to come together and provide this kind of catalytic capital. So, and just to stress one more time, we went through those collaboratives a second ago, and Kelly was talking about the role of GIFT. We have investment funds that many of you are probably investors in, where you fully expect to get your money back with the return, and that is the kind of definition of an investment fund. These collaboratives are gift. Is gift money, where people are donating money to RSF and then we're using it for these purposes, and where there's a loan guarantee not needed or investment that returns, that gets recycled back in and redeployed, but it stays in the gift stream. So I just want to be crystal clear about that. We'll be happy to take questions in a second. I do want to thank you for being on the call, and I wanted to point out that if you're an entrepreneur out there or part of the management team of a social enterprise, you can contact Stuart Krenkel on our lending team, and his email address is here to inquire about that. If you are interested in inquiring about the integrated capital collaboratives and potentially making a gift to one of those, you can contact Alex Haber, whose email is here in the philanthropic services group here, works for Kelly. And if you're interested in investing in our core loan fund, which is where the money comes from to put to work for that, the 3.2 million or the 1.6 portion of our loan to Veritable Vegetable, you can contact Mark Herrera to learn more about how to invest in that fund. And the minimum there is just $1,000. We consider it a fairly unique impact investing vehicle for all. And so that's a little plug around that.
Great, thank you, Don and Kelly and Kate, and for being on time and for answering questions. Now we're moving on to the Q&A portion. As a reminder, please type your questions into the Zoom chat box and let us know what you're thinking, what you're just pondering. Help us think through things. All right, so the first question is actually for Kate, and it is, what is the cost of capital for each of the types of loan/investments made in the Veritable Vegetable example?
Can I reveal all of that information? Okay, let's see. Good question. So the cost of capital, well, I guess I'm wondering, is cost of capital to RSF or cost of capital Veritable Vegetable?
Let's leave it at cost of capital to RSF.
Okay, good question.
Yeah.
All right, so for the $1.6 million loan, the senior secured loan that we made, that is out of our social enterprise lending program. The money comes from our social investment fund, where right now the cost of capital or the return to our investors is 0.5%. On the, let's see, what's next? The $270,000 piece, which was the subordinated debt that came out of the local food collaborative. There's actually, because that's a gift, there's no cost of capital to RSF, and that $30,000 piece that was a match to the USDA grant also came out of the local food collaborative, so there's no cost of capital for that portion either.
And then for the $400,000 part, if you're looking, well, you probably can't look at it. Can you go to it, Enrique, real quick? So we talked about the Veritable Vegetable example, and we talked about, you may have missed it, what I said initially is the key part. If you look at this slide and you look at the purplish circle, the $400,000, this is where we had a small group of investors come alongside us to provide the additional subordinated unsecured debt for Veritable Vegetable that was a key component of that $800,000 total. And so they kind of struck their own agreements directly with Veritable Vegetable. No?
They participated with us.
They participated with us. Okay.
Yeah. That was an option, but again, Kelly mentioned that in the local food collaborative, the folks that came to us originally to get that kicked off, there's a lot of trust there. And in the same way, the folks that participated in that $400,000, it was originally, we thought about having them strike their own deal with Veritable Vegetable, but in the end they said, you know what, we trust your underwriting, we'd like to review it, but at the end of the day, what you're signing up for in that $270,000 will also sign up for.
So the next question is, how do you decide if a company needs an integrated capital deal?
For me.
Mhm.
So one of the most interesting things that we've learned, or having the opportunity to work with integrated different types of funds, is that we can, I feel like we can find an integrated capital opportunity in almost every transaction. And when you're working with just one type of capital, senior secured loan, it's easier to get to a yes or a no, whereas with integrated capital, it's much more difficult. If it's a really compelling story, there are so many more tools to make it work. But I will say, when we realize it is when we get into underwriting. So RSF, senior secured loans are some of the hardest loans to make, or tend to have the most rules and structure around them. So our underwriting team does a tremendous amount of diligence. And during that diligence process, our credit memos can be 30 to 40 pages sometimes. We uncover other types of capital or non-financial capital needs that they might have. And so it's usually in the initial underwriting or due diligence phase that we recognize it.
Yeah, and I guess I would add another framing that we use is, will this funding be catalytic?
Mm-hmm.
So would it not happen if not for RSF?
Mm-hmm.
A filter.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a question, maybe for Dawn. How many lead donors do you have for the new collaboratives, and how much are you looking to fundraise per year?
Mm-hmm. So it depends on each one. So Local Food Collaborative is the farthest along. It's about 5 years old, and as Kelly mentioned, I believe we have 14 donors that are part of that collaborative, totaling about $6.3 million that has been committed, and so we are fundraising for that ongoing. That one's off to a nice start, as Kelly said. We've already deployed quite a bit of capital into tens of enterprises now. So that's the farthest along. Then with the Biodynamics Capital Collaborative, we have 2 lead donors that have committed just over $3 million, and there's a commitment for another $1 million per year for 4 years from one of those donors. And so we are looking for people who are very passionate about biodynamic agriculture, because that movement is at an inflection point right now. And this kind of capital is critical because there's so many early stage organizations that are just not ready for bank financing or other conventional types of capital. The Women's Capital Collaborative, we have 2 lead donors who have put in $1 million apiece, and so we are very excited about this one because we have historically seen so many inspiring women-led social enterprises like Veritable Vegetable that you heard about, and we feel like we don't feel like, we know the data tells us that women have much less access to capital than men do, and so this is an area that we feel like we can make a good contribution in. At the Fair Trade Capital Collaborative, we have 1 lead donor at $1 million, and we're currently doing a set of initial projects where we're working with our own borrowers, 3 borrowers of ours that we have known for a long time: Indigenous Designs, Guayaquil, and Equal Exchange, who have been working to build fair trade supply chains for over 20 years each. And so they have very deep relationships, and there's a lot of expensive money out there for small fair trade suppliers around the world. And so we're going to work through a trust underwriting process with these existing borrowers of ours to identify projects that we wouldn't otherwise be able to reach, and where they would otherwise have access only to very expensive loans. And then in soil health, we have 1 lead donor of $1 million. We just made our first financing out of this to an organization called Grassroots Co-op in Arkansas. That's a grass-fed beef and pork and chicken cooperative, and this one is around the connection between soil health and carbon sequestration, and just soil vitality and soil health generally. And happy to talk more about any of these. And so that's a brief snapshot of the money in on these, and a little bit of the focus on each. And we're looking for more lead donors, and we're looking for smaller donors as well for each of these.
So on that note, here's a question for Kelly. Do you have a gift acceptance policy in place that ensures all gifts are in alignment and reflective of your values and mission?
I wouldn't say we have a policy, but that's pretty much the entire job of my team, I would say. There's a piece, we have a philanthropic services purpose statement, and part of that is, working to help ensure that, the gifts fulfill, the highest values and intentions of our clients. So that's definitely a big piece of the work, our donor relationships and building those and strengthening those. And then we also have a large due diligence process as well on the philanthropic side. So yeah, I would say, although it's not a policy, that's the work of our team.
Okay. How is impact measured in each capital collaborative? And let's just, because impact can be measured very differently for each, why don't we just pick one that we feel very comfortable on?
Mm-hmm.
Probably gonna have to be
First
the
name?
local food collaborative.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Or fair trade, either one.
Or fair trade, yeah. So this is Kate. That is a great question. So RSF, there's two types of impact metrics that RSF focuses on. For a very long time, we've really focused on how the capital that we provide is catalytic for the businesses that we work with, and how the interaction between RSF and the relationship that we build can be transformative for the organization. So it's not necessarily, here's $1, how many jobs do you create? That is not all we focus on. We really do try and figure out how, as Kelly said around the role of gift, how money and relationship can transform the way that we actually do business. So we have a handful of internal metrics that we focus on both in our lending program, and it's being integrated into the integrated capital collaboratives around that topic. And then we're doing a lot of this in the fair trade capital collaborative right now, actually trying to develop metrics around more of that. What does this $250,000 loan to rebuild a facility or buy sewing machines in Peru do for the community and the workers and the wages? So I feel like some of those impact measurements are a little bit more traditional, as you would see in a lot of development. Here's $1, what's the output of that dollar in an impact way? And then we also, as Kelly also mentioned, we are always looking to see how RSF's role is catalytic. And I don't know if maybe Don wants to say more about that, but it is about how our dollars can be leveraged to create more impact.
Yeah, I can say a little more about that. So I think it's a great question, and it's on a lot of people's minds these days about impact measurement. And for a long time, Kelly alluded to this in a couple different ways so far. We are very much about the what, which is what is being accomplished as a result of the capital being deployed to where it is, and we're equally, if not more, focused on the how than the what. So this trust underwriting feature of the Fair Trade Collaborative is something that we're really interested in as an experiment, where we're actually not going down to examine the nature of the collateral in Paraguay, or we are counting on the fact that Equal Exchange and Guayaquil and Indigenous Designs have been building relationships with the principal suppliers that they have in these countries for decades, and have been going to Thanksgiving at their suppliers' houses, and that then relates to a level of relationship that's hard to capture in an impact metric in terms of how it changes the lives of the people that we're supporting through these funds. We do believe that often, as I alluded to earlier with the Fair Trade Collaborative, that we'll be providing a loan at X% that's less than half of what they would typically get, and that's certainly helpful and very important to the suppliers. But it's really, we're very interested in looking at, could this trust underwriting approach be applied more widely? And can we look at the nature of money such that eventually we're not even charging interest? We may be looking at our role and how we could get paid in a totally different way for the service that we're providing, and move towards zero interest loans and other ways of doing things that are closer to a gift gesture, but still are. So it's a much longer subject, but I would say the heading is oftentimes people really get focused just on the what, and we spend a lot of time on the how, and which is a little bit harder to pin down sometimes.
Great. So this question is for Kate, but Dawn or Kelly, please feel free to hop in if you'd like. How long did it take to do the veritable vegetable deal, to start from start to finish? And then what were some of the due diligence pieces for this project?
Good question. Okay, so it took us, I mean, we've been having this conversation with them for years, 12 years, 4 years, for as long as I've ever been involved. But in earnest, we worked on this deal for about 5 or 6 months. From structuring, once the structuring was clear, it was identifying the right partners, and then once we identified the right partners, it was making sure the terms that that we needed for the partners worked for Veritable Vegetable, and then all the pieces were coming together. So it took about 5 or 6 months, and then many months on the front end of that, and many months on the back end of that, just tying things together, but in earnest. And then the different pieces of due diligence. Is that the question? So again, Veritable Vegetable, we were lucky because it was led by a senior secured loan, and we do a lot of diligence. I mean, the highest degree of diligence, there are certain things that senior secured lending really does require, which is profitability, ability to debt service, good, strong collateral. And so since we had done all of that work on the front end for our senior secured loan, it was easy then for the other pieces of the integrated capital to back into, a lot of those questions were answered through the due diligence process. Now, if we started with a loan that didn't have a senior secured loan and we were just looking at equity or sub-debt, or was something that we'd have to do our own due diligence and underwriting for those components. But when you start with a senior secured loan, you're really doing 95% of the diligence you need. That satisfies all of the stakeholders in that transaction.
Great.
Let me just add one other thing, which is that I think we anticipate serving two major types of enterprises through something like the local food collaborative. One would be an organization like Veritable Vegetable that's been around for 40 years, that's been profitable for 28 years, and is a significant, well-known player here in the Bay Area in terms of organic food distribution, with tens of millions of dollars in revenue. The other type would be one that we didn't talk about, like Common Market Philadelphia, that is much smaller. Initially had $600,000 in revenue when we made the first line of credit available to them, and then that built up, and then we helped them buy a building with some loan guarantees and some interestingly structured loans, and then helped them get grants, and so that's the much earlier stage version. So just so you can picture that we're out there talking to, I mean, of course there are those in the middle too, but those are two types.
That's a really good point, Don. A lot of the companies we see aren't as mature as Veritable Vegetable, and so we're often first looking. A lot of our pipeline right now comes to us through our loan program, and so we are doing a first pass on whether it fits for a loan, and in that process we identify whether it does or doesn't, or what pieces of it do fit for a loan and what pieces need to be met with other types of capital. And in the past, we've always identified those other types of capital. We've just had to say, hey, we'll make a loan if you go find equity. Hey, we'll make a loan, but we think you need these other components. Now we can say, okay, we can do this portion of the loan, but they need some equity. Is RSF the right partner to bring that piece to the table, or are there people we can introduce them to? So it's still a very similar process. We just now have the tools and the networks to be able to bring it.
This next person asks, does RSF get participants, integrated capital participants, in each of the collaboratives together to share lessons learned / best practices? Kelly, would you like to take that one on?
I sure can, yeah. We haven't yet, but I know that that is one of our goals for the future, is really to have both like donor collaborative meetups and also to do introductions between the enterprises that are getting funding from that collaborative to meet with the donors. So in that gesture of us trying to have all financial transactions be direct, transparent, and personal, that's one of our goals, is to have all of those players be visible to each other.
And that's why we deliberately chose the term collaborative to describe and to do that. So yes.
This one's for Don. What size donations are accepted into the collaboratives, and can they be directed to a specific enterprise?
I'll start and go backwards. No, they can't be designated for a specific enterprise because we need to honor our ability to make a lot of those decisions about how the money is best deployed. In terms of sizes, I think that the minimum that we're saying is, Kelly, help me, $5,000 in the collaboratives, and so that's the minimum, and we'd love to see if people can help us more than that too.
And just to add to that, if I don't know who asked that question, but if somebody had a particular enterprise that they were really interested in receiving some type of integrated capital approach, in a lot of the projects that we look at, it does require other people to participate along with us, either in providing a guarantee or bringing in a loan or equity. So if there's a specific enterprise that you think is a good fit for one of our collaboratives, just because giving to the collaborative, your dollars can't go directly to one specific enterprise, we can look at bringing that gift or loan alongside that specific enterprise if we can move forward with them.
Yeah, that's right. And one quick add to that, it's a great point, is that the grassroots co-op in Arkansas, we found out about through a donor client of ours initially, I think. So, so we'd love to hear if there are enterprises you're seeing that you think could benefit from integrated capital. We would like to learn about them.
Great. What is the average rate of return that RSF earns, either by integrated capital or social enterprise lending? Do you take equity? Is the other question in that.
I can jump in on that. So we are doing equity investing out of these collaboratives, and we're very excited to be embarking on that. We've had a fund historically where we've done mezzanine finance or subordinated unsecured debt, and so we know how to do that as well, in addition to senior secured. So short answer is yes, we are doing equity investing. We will be doing it in such a way that it's patient and unlike the common or traditional or conventional structures of venture capital, but we will be doing equity, and we have done equity investments out of these collaboratives. And then in terms of return, the way we look at it with our loans, like the $1.6 million that we put into the veritable vegetable transaction, is that our revenue share or the amount we need to get paid to execute those kinds of transactions is 4.25%. So that's comparable to what conventional banks effectively charge for their portion of the underwriting and documentation and servicing and all the other things that they do and that we do in making loans possible. And so we do have some risk adjustments to that we do, but that's the base that we. So right now we have what's called RSF Prime, and I'll do the quick math here, so hopefully won't lose you, but it's fairly straightforward. So we return half of 1% to our investors right now, so 0.5% to our investors in our social investment fund, which is a $100 million loan portfolio. And then we have the 4.25% that I just mentioned. And so if you add those two together, the base interest rate that we offer to borrowers right now is 4.75%.
Does RSF provide guarantees for other organizations?
This is Kate. No, we don't. If there is a integrated capital opportunity that we are going to fund that requires a guarantee, and another group is coming in alongside us to provide that loan, the guarantee can be shared. But right now, we just don't have the resources available to provide third-party guarantees on loans or investments that we're not involved in.
I guess this question's for Kate as well. What are the screens that you use for projects that you consider for investments or gifts? And Kelly, you can jump in as well if you'd like.
Mm-hmm. What are the screens that we use for projects that you consider for investments or gifts?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. Well, I guess just to start, each of these, each of the collaboratives, their focus area really ties in to an expertise or a theory of change that RSF has in one of its focus areas already. So it's either like in biodynamics, it's something that we know very well. It's something we do a lot of deep thinking about. We haven't done a tremendous amount of lending in that area because it's been so nascent in the United States, but we know a lot about it. So I feel like so when we see projects, we do have an instinct around whether that is a good match for that collaborative. In the fair trade or the local food, we have deep expertise in those areas because a lot of our loans already work in those areas and our partners work in those areas. So in terms of how we screen for projects that fit, it usually ties into some work that we already have a pretty deep understanding of.
Yeah, and I would just add around gifts, that related to sort of our study around the role of gift in the economy. It's often used around education and research and development. So to the extent that we see a project where those are the needs, that's often when we'll feel that gift is the right form of capital that they need. And then in some cases, equity can also function similarly to gift. So we definitely study like the different forms of money to determine what the right form is for each enterprise.
I would say one informal criteria screen that we use is, if someone else could do it in a relatively straightforward way, that's usually not where we tend to hang out. We tend to go to do things that are hard on purpose. So we were like the bank of the organic food industry between like 2002 and 2010, and that industry matured, and the funds we were providing were no longer as catalytic as they once were, and so we then migrated up the value chain and have done more work in local food distribution and processing, for example, because that's where there's more need. It's also harder to do, and so that's we kind of pride ourselves in trying to seek out where we really need it. And so I would say that's a screen.
Is there a regional focus with the collaboratives?
No, there's not. We do, there are some, and when it comes to local food, there are some areas of the country where we have kind of a hotspot of both companies we've lent money to and borrowers and investors and network partners. So we are exposed to more there, and we have partnerships that can reinforce work being done there. But no, we don't have a regional approach specifically to our.
And I would just say we want to try hard to get places that we don't have, that aren't part of those hotspots. I mean, we would love to do more work in the Hudson River Valley in New York and in Northern California. And Kate and I just got back from Central Louisiana, and that's a place, places like that are where we'd like to do more work in the future.
So we have about 4 minutes left for about 1 or 2 more questions. That said, I would advise anyone who still has questions or hasn't had a question answered to please reach out to us. Again, here's the contact information. Now, the question is, do you have a sweet spot in terms of deals that RSF would do?
Well,
In terms of deal size.
Deal size.
Rather.
Out of integrated
capital, yes.
So each of the collaboratives have slightly different strategies and slightly different funding priorities and deal sizes, but I would say that the bulk of them range anywhere from about $50,000 up to potentially $250,000, just depending on the collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
Yep.
And when it comes to things like the grant side of things, those technical assistance grants and the occasional strategic grants tend to be in the $5,000 to $25,000, whereas loans can be higher. Each product, each tool that we showed in the toolbox has a different range.
I was just going to add that as we've been learning from the local food capital collaborative and starting these other collaboratives, we've just been learning a lot with every single funding deal that comes through. And so we're looking at both qualitative and quantitative sort of reflections on them. And so it's just a learning period for us.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say that so we're clear on on our core loan fund, we're making loans between $250,000 and $5 million. So that's picture that being in one column, and then the column that we've mainly been talking about today that Kate just referred to, with the collaboratives integrated capital transactions, that's the $50,000 to $250,000 range.
Final question. What resources are there for companies who would like to qualify for a loan but may not be fully ready for the process or have some challenges passing screening criteria?
Mm-hmm.
Good one.
Yeah, well, I'll jump in. We know lots of people in this field in different regions. We know different technical assistance service providers. We ourselves do some of that work. I mean, some of the most fulfilling loans and financing that we've done has been when we talked to someone where they were too early for us, and then we had some conversation with them. We introduced them to potential equity investors or others who could get them farther along, and then they came back, and when they came back, they were a B Corp, or when they came back, they had done X, Y, or Z other things, and so that's a little bit of it's hard to just list out, 31 bullet points of TA providers right now, but that's a little bit on it.
And we have these conversations all the time as initial conversations, but I would encourage you, if you have a friend who's in banking or finance, it's actually pretty easy in a 30 to 45 minute conversation around where your organization is in its growth trajectory, what you perceive the needs to be, what your hopes are for the future. It's fairly easy to tease out in a 30 to 45 minute conversation with someone that kind of works in the financial industry of like what your basic needs may be and what you need to do to get ready for them. So you can give us a call certainly, but I would encourage, there are resources around you that can at least help you start to think about what the pieces are that you need to identify.
But one other quick thing is that no matter how early stage you are, I urge you, we're familiar with the fact that capital is like oxygen and you need it. And think about what your longer term goals are right out of the gate, because we've seen it time and time again. Our culture of money in the United States is all about venture capital right now, which is a fast money culture. And once you get going on that train, it's hard to get off in an elegant way or in a way that'll be satisfying for you personally or for your the values of your enterprise. And so if you need help understanding what that means, I guess you call us. Yeah.
And that ends our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will aim to have a recording of this presentation posted to you on our website, our brand new website, within the next few days. Please check it out. And I hope everyone has a great day. Goodbye
Thanks,
now.
Thanks.